Don't Turn on the Light, from Spooky, Maryland. She commandeered the small study room in the basement of her dormitory as soon as she realized she would have to pull an all-nighter in order to prepare for tomorrow's final exam in history. Her roommate, Jenna, liked to get to bed early, so she packed up everything she thought she would need and went downstairs to study, and study, and study some more. Around midnight, she ordered pizza and wings, thank goodness for all-night cafes, and munched away until close to 2 o'clock, when she realized that she'd left one of the textbooks she needed upstairs on her bed. She did a bit of creative cursing, and for a moment contemplated leaving it there and just making do with the book she already had. But she knew that her professor had relied heavily on the information in that particular text in the midterm exam. With a dramatic sigh, she rose, stretched out the kinks in her back, and climbed the stairs slowly to her third-floor dorm room. The lights were dim in the long hallway, and the old boards creaked under her weary tread. She'd have to walk more softly than that if she wasn't to wake Jenna, who was a light sleeper. She reached her room and turned the handle as softly as she could, pushing the door open just enough to slip inside so that the hall lights wouldn't wake her roommate. The room was filled with a strange metallic smell that was new. She frowned a bit, her arms breaking out into chills. She was a bit frightened, though she could not fathom why. There was almost a feeling of malice in the room, as if a malevolent gaze were fixed upon her. Which was nonsense, of course. She obviously needed to get some sleep after finals were over, if this was the sort of trick her mind was starting to play on her. She could hear Jenna breathing on the far side of the room, a heavy sound, almost as if she had been running. Jenna must have picked up a cold during the last tense week before finals. No wonder her roommate had wanted to go to bed early. She crept along the wall until she reached her bed, groping among the covers for the stray history textbook. In the silence, she could hear a steady drip, drip, drip sound. She sighed silently. It must be the bathroom sink leaking again. Facilities had come to fix it just last week, but apparently they'd done a shoddy job. She'd have to call them again in the morning. Her fingers closed on the textbook. She picked it up softly and withdrew from the room as silently as she could. There was no change in Jenna's heavy breathing, so she must not have awakened her. Good. Her roommate needed the rest to recover from her cold. Relieved to be out of the room, she hurried back downstairs and collapsed into an overstuffed chair to peruse her book and take some more notes. The tedious hours ticked by. Around 6 o'clock, as it began to grow light outside, she decided that enough was enough. If she slipped upstairs now, she could get a couple hours' sleep before her 9 o'clock exam. Collecting her books and papers, she packed up her bag and trudged slowly up the stairs to her room, exhausted almost beyond bearing. The verse of the sun's rays were beaming through the windows as she slowly slid the door open, hoping not to awaken Jenna. Her nose was met by an earthy, metallic smell a second before her eyes registered the scene in her dorm room. Jenna was spread-eagled on top of her bed against the far wall, her throat cut from ear to ear, and her nightdress stained with blood. There was blood everywhere, spattered on the wall, saturating the bedclothes, and in a huge congealing pool on the floor under the bed. As she gazed at the room in shock, 2 drops of blood fell from the saturated blanket with a drip-drip noise that sounded like a leaky faucet. Vaguely, as if from a distance, she became aware of a horrible screeching sound. Scream after scream ripped through the building as regular as clockwork. Dimly she realized that she was the one wailing